Welcome, everyone. Week one is finally past us. We have real games being played and information that we can use now to make our teams better. No longer are we in speculative season. We are actually assessing real games. In this video, I'm going to give you 5 players, 2 who I think did really good and deserve the shout out, 2 who didn't do so well. We're going to talk about why, and then 1 player who I believe is a diamond that you need to get right now in order to help win your league championship. So I know it's going to get a little negative in the middle there, but I promise to make this compliment sandwich with some positivity, assessment, more positivity. So keep watching. Maybe you'll win your league. The first player I'm going to start off with is safety Julian Love. And I know what you're thinking, Matt, why would you start with a safety as your first player of your first video of the year? I believe the safety is the most important position on the defense. You have to be athletic enough to keep up with the fastest receivers on the planet. You have to be strong enough to effectively stop the run when tasked to be in the box or to blitz. And you have to be smart enough to be able to understand what the quarterback is going to do before he does it. The perfect player for this week was Julian Love. Love had 12 total tackles. And in IDP, I believe the only way that you truly win a game is if you have that consistent tackle floor with some big play upside. And Love had the upside too. He had an interception and he forced a fumble. So his game stats were 10 solo tackles, 2 assists, a forced fumble, an interception, and a defended pass. That is a boom week. That is a big deal, and we should celebrate it. Safeties can be a dime a dozen, but if you get that guy that ascends and is one of the better players at the position, it really separates your team from the pack. And Julian Love, if you were brave enough and smart enough to get him, did that for you in the first week of the year and probably set himself apart from the rest of the position for the rest of the year moving forward. The second player who I'm going to talk about, and I'm going to be positive, but not 100%, is Demarcus Lawrence. Demarcus Lawrence had 5 tackles and 2 sacks. That's a big deal. He has been an edge rusher for the Dallas Cowboys for the better part of 7 years, and he used to be the guy. But then they got the guy, Micah Parsons. So now he has moved into the secondary role, which I believe has benefited him in the twilight years of his career. And we're seeing that. People are so aggressively defending Micah Parsons that he is getting more and more one-on-one opportunities, and he has proven to us that he can get to the quarterback in that spot. The problem I run into is I don't believe he does it at a high enough clip to be a focal point of your edge rushers. So I advise people to move Demarcus Lawrence as soon as you can for whatever you can get because you've got a 30-plus-year-old pass rusher, and eventually the wheels are going to fall off. That doesn't mean that he can't help your roster if you're in a win now. If you're in a win now, he's the perfect type of guy. He's a chips in the middle type of a player, and you can be somebody who says, you know what, I'm starting this guy because I need a 2-sack week to beat my opponent. But if you're a manager in a rebuild spot, or maybe you're stuck in that terrible spot in the middle where you can't quite ascend to the top, but you're not bad enough to get that first pick, then I believe you need to move him and try to just acquire some more depth assets. I'm not asking you to get a 1 out of the guy, but I do believe he's got some value that can bring some wins to your team, or you can sell him off and get some more pieces. So either way, if you're on the receiving end of a trade with him or you're on the giveaway, I think he's a player that can effectively help you win your league. But you have to know when you can and can't use him. Now we're going to get a little bit negative here, so I apologize to Saints fans and Ohio State Buckeyes fans. But Pete Werner might be dead. There was a time where I would have pounded the table and said that Pete Werner was the #1 linebacker in Dynasty. But the last few years, we have seen a shell of a player. Now, it could be because of injuries, and maybe he's young enough that he can overcome them. But if you've watched Pete Werner over the past year, year and a half, he's not the same player. And it's gotten to the point now where I'm almost nervous to put him in my lineups because of the bust potential. He went from a player that was consistently getting us 8 to 12 tackles a week with some minor boom plays in the middle to now getting us 2 to 3 a week if we're lucky and virtually disappearing within the game. He's a player that plays most of, if not all of the snaps, but instead of getting any sort of stats, he just kind of is there. And IDP is a stat-based game. It's a snap count game first, and he does check that box. But when you're in the game, you got to do something. And the guy is just flat out not doing it anymore. I don't think he's cut worthy yet. I do think that he is a risk to be putting in your lineups, and I think we need to wait and see. And he's just young enough that he can turn it around. But right now, I am not hoping for it. I do not think it's going to happen. And I would be I'd be kind of wary to put him in my lineup. So, Pete Werner, I'm sorry, man. I was pounding the table for you, but it just feels over. And I got to move on. It's not you, it's me. The second player that I am not so high on is Pittsburgh linebacker Patrick Queen. Patrick Queen was arguably the most hyped free agent in IDP circles when he went to Pittsburgh. And I feel like it's because we're longing for the days of Ryan Shazier when he was the dominant linebacker prior to the horrific injury he suffered. But Patrick Queen was supposed to take that mantle. He had a great career for the Baltimore Ravens early on. The Ravens elected to pay Roquan Smith, so you knew eventually he was going to move on because he wanted to get paid. And he performed really well as almost an understudy to Roquan Smith. So now that he has his opportunity in Pittsburgh, what does he do? He lays an egg. And I'm nervous about that. Pittsburgh has not had a very good amount of inside linebackers over the course of the last 6 to 7 years. And unfortunately, it looks like Patrick Queen has fallen into that weird no man's land of linebacker there. I do think that there's some other red flags that we need to be aware of. Patrick Queen played nearly all of Pittsburgh's snaps. He played more than the next two linebackers combined, but he was outscored by rookie Peyton Wilson in his first career game. Now, maybe Patrick Queen in the assignment or the scheme was supposed to do this, and maybe Peyton Wilson was supposed to do this. All I know is that a rookie linebacker who played less snaps than one of the most hyped players this offseason, he outscores him. That's a red flag. We can't ignore that. Now, did Peyton Wilson have a big game and jump off the screen? No, but he still scored more. He had a mediocre game and it was still more. So I think that we need to pump the brakes on the Patrick Queen hype a little bit. I don't think that we need to trade him. I don't think we need to cut him. I do think we need to think twice before playing him in your lineups. And I do think that we need to start thinking about maybe potential exit plans if this trend continues. But we've seen him perform well as a second linebacker. But it was a Baltimore Ravens defensive scheme that we know pumps out really good IDP players. The days of the Pittsburgh IDP player, are they gone? TJ Watt seems to be doing pretty well. Minkah Fitzpatrick does pretty well. Alex Highsmith does pretty well. Can Patrick Queen do well? I don't know. It doesn't feel good to start. Now that I've got that negativity off my chest, I'm going to end this video with what I believe could truly be the most cliche thing in the world, a league winner. Zack Bond, the linebacker for the Philadelphia Eagles, absolutely popped off the screen on Friday at the Brazil game. He had an absolutely dominating performance. He had 15 tackles and 2 sacks. Not only was this because of injury, and we'll get back to that, I believe it's because he's finally getting the first opportunity to be the guy in a defense. At the preseason talks and the training camp news that we all love to overread and overreact to, one minor little nugget always was kind of weird with this story. Bond was seen to be having a back and forth with Nakobe Dean over who was going to be the second linebacker to Devin White. However, Devin White had an injury, and now there are reports that maybe Zack Bond just beat him out. So Devin White might be the odd man out, which is just a bonkers thing to say out loud, especially considering what Devin White was to the IDP community just 2 to 3 years ago. But one man's trash is another man's treasure. Devin White leaves. It opens up an opportunity for Zack Bond. And when I was first told about Zack Bond to kind of look around and see, hey, is this a legit story? And shout out to my little bro for that. That was a big find. I start looking at him and I start thinking, okay, there's something here. Nakobe Dean was drafted to be the man here, and for whatever reason, he's just not done it yet. So the back and forth there was always kind of intriguing. But the fact that they've just eliminated Devin White altogether, and then we see this performance from Bond, on the stage, and he ends the game with a just dramatic sack. I think, why not? The best part about him, he's going to be available in 90% of your leagues. Nobody's talking about this guy. Well, now they're going to be talking about him. And I think that this is your last opportunity to get him on your roster for cheap because he's probably on your waivers. And if you're savvy enough to get him early, kudos to you. I've been talking about this guy since training camp. I wrote an article about how good he's going to be, and you saw it firsthand. So take my word for this. Get him, put him in your lineup, set and forget. He's a seek and destroy linebacker. He sees ball, he hits ball, he's consistent about it, and he will help you achieve your dream of beating your coworkers, beating that random guy on the internet because you're a sicko like me and you're in a million of these things. Or simply beat the opponent on the other side of that screen. Zack Bond will be a league winner. Thank you so much, guys. As always, my name is Matthew Montgomery. All of my written content you can find on footballguys.com. I do a lot of these videos. I'm going to do them once a week here for RPO football. But I also have a weekly stock market article that goes off on footballguys.com, as well as the forward projections for the Draft Dominator app. So I'm on Twitter at Matt Monty FF. Follow all the socials. I'm all on there with the same tag at Matt Monty FF. Thank you so much for watching these as always. It's football season. We're here. We're seeing real stuff here. We're no longer guessing. This is the info. Thank you so much for watching this. I cannot wait for week 2. Let's go win a league.